welcome everyone. I'm Shivani Sivagurunathan and I will be your host for today's Readings at Home, also known as Readings at Seksan, in the days when these sessions were held at the wonderful Seksan Gallery on Jalan Tempinis in Bangsa. Recently, I was chatting with a friend who used to attend these sessions, and we were reminiscing about how warm and fun and engaging those gatherings were, and how we miss just being able to walk up to other book lovers and writers and have a good chat and a nice snack and leave feeling full on many levels. But until we can return to that space, we have this space, which I know many of us are grateful for. At least we're able to hear from writers and to continue to engage with one another's work and to share our ideas and responses on this virtual platform. In fact, just for fun, and so we get a sense of everyone who's here, drop a comment in the Readings Facebook page or the YouTube channel, wherever you're watching this video. Just say hello, how you're doing, and what your current read is. And I'll reveal what my current read is later on in this session. And I absolutely welcome you to post your comments, emojis, responses to whatever resonates with you as we go along today's session. So, my friends, what's in store for our literary hour together? Well, we have an exciting and versatile mix of writers lined up for you today. We have 4 writers. So stay tuned, sit back, and let's enjoy the readings that are coming up. Our first writer is Ipoh-born Paul Nyanaselvam. A bit of an anecdote as a means of introduction. I first met Paul around 8 years ago at a writers' event in Ipoh. We were both reading from our recently published books. His was Lata's Christmas and Other Stories, published in 2013. And funnily, we're back in the same boat in 2021. Our second books are out this year as well, just a few months apart. Not sure if Paul's following me or if I'm following Paul, but I rather like the syncing that's happening. So Paul's been writing since 2006 and he's published in various international and local literary journals, anthologies, e-magazines. His stories are honest, gripping explorations of the experiences, issues, and identity conflicts in the Indian diaspora. And you'll find such stories in his latest book, The Elephant Trophy and Other Stories, published by Penguin Random House Southeast Asia in 2021, just a few months ago. It has a gorgeous front cover as well. He's currently teaching and researching at University Tunku Abdul Rahman in Kampa. So big welcome to Paul.
Hi, a very good afternoon and welcome to Seksan's in September. Thank you for the invitation to the organizers and definitely thank you for the author introduction, Shivani. And it's good to be here and to actually read again at Seksan's, yeah? I'm Paul Nyanaselvam, and I come from Ipoh, Perak, and I write short stories, mainly from the Indian male perspectives, all right? And today I'm going to read a short story from my latest collection of short stories, The Elephant Trophy and Other Stories, which was published by Penguin Random House Southeast Asia in July 2021. And I'm going to read excerpts from the titular story, all right, The Elephant Trophy. All right. There are about 18 short stories in this book, and they mainly cover themes that has to do with social politics, socio-economic imbalances, gender issues, and social class juxtaposed with community values, right? So I'm going to read the titular Elephant Trophy, and here it goes. Okay? All right. In South India, particularly where Pati came from, Vinayagar Chaturthi is celebrated on a grand scale. Temple elephants, often decorated with gilt caparisons, have colored rangoli patterned on their bodies and silk parasols for headdresses. Often seen chained at certain corners on the temple grounds, the elephants have to work and they make money for their keepers. People throng to these sections to receive blessings from the elephants, revered as sacred animals. Upon paying a small token, one can make offerings of food to the elephants, fruits, sugarcane, sweets, etc., that the creatures often roll and pop into their mouth and then place the tip of their trunk on the devotee's head as an act of blessing. Let me tell you something, Pati cautions me. Elephants do not forget. Her face turns gaunt and foreboding. Her eyelids are still closed, but I can see the pupils moving about. She continues to speak in low whisper. Remember Achyutan, the coconut seller? Who? Where? But she is not waiting for me to provide answers. Appa has tied the sugarcane bundles, and there are also other kinds of fruits and inner stems of the banana trees to be given to her when she arrives. All of us are happy. Kumuda is coming to our street today. We are all dressed in our best clothes. Amma is wearing her jewels. The puja tray has to be offered when the chariot bearing Ganesha goes past our shop. Oh yes, this year Kumuda will walk in front of the chariot and bestow blessings on the devotees. People, probably we will get to touch her as she marches, caressing everything with her trunk on her way. This is the best time to go close enough to touch the loose folds of skin between her hind legs and enjoy watching mischievous children trying to catch hold of a swaying tail that moves like a pendulum. Much to the chagrin of the elephant keepers, Pati smiles. Elephants are an integral part of Hinduism, and for devotees of Ganesha, the elephant represented him. Legend has it that when Brahma, the creator, first breathed life into the cosmos, the universe took the form of an egg without a hard shell. As Brahma continued to blow life-giving winds, the egg became volatile and began to wobble dangerously, unable to bear the turbulence. On earth there were earthquakes, firestorms, thunder and lightning, and the sea began to rise and move inland. Unable to bear the pain and worried that she might be thrown off course, Mother Earth summoned the great sages from the Himalayas for relief. The rishis descended from Kailash and recited prayers. After days of rigorous fasting and observing impossible sadhanas, the rishis were answered by Indra himself. From the Ganges emerged Indravata, Indra's riding elephant, followed by Kumuda, Vamana and Anjana, who then took up their positions to hold the Earth's 4 cosmic epicenters with their tusks, until the universe stabilized. Some minutes pass before Pati wakes up again. She looks about the room and nods at me a few times. She laughs quietly and closes her eyes, still smiling. Perturbed, I call out to her, Pati, to which she waves her hand, asking me to be quiet. Do you hear them? She asks. The Nadaswaram troop is nearing. I can hear the drum beats accompanied by the blaring of the trumpets. It's coming from the Brahmin quarters. We are ready. Kumuda will arrive at our street any time now. The coconut merchants live in the next street. As the street is full of people, Appa has agreed to pick me up and seat me on his shoulders. The entourage has appeared. The golden parasol shielding the deity on top of the decorated chariot is followed by Kumuda, looking resplendent in her decorations. The men shouted excitedly while the women got ready with their silver trays, laden with offerings, and the children stopped what they were doing to see what all the commotion was about. The music grew louder, and as Kumuda approached, I could hear the tinkling of the huge bell around her neck. She looked benign, munching away on the sweets and fruits. sometimes shaking her head. The mahout sat right on top of her flat head and moved his heels into her ears. While the adults offered prayers at the chariot, the children lined up to be blessed by Kumuda. Soon the pujas ended and the priest signaled to the mahout to move. It was then that Kumuda refused to obey orders and began to shake her head violently. She groaned and trumpeted loudly, interrupting the Nadaswaram. The musicians paused, distracted by her sudden change in behavior. The large crowd gathered on the opposite block was equally puzzled at the turn of events. The priest was agitated and began to scold the mahout, who in turn began to shout and kick and poke Kumuda on her head. Kumuda took a few steps back and then complied. But suddenly, as she reached the opposite bazaar, she became restless and all hell broke loose. Nothing could stop her. She trundled back and forth aimlessly, kicking and smashing anything that blocked her way. Her deep trumpeting was furious and deafening. Her mahout shouted orders, kicked her ears, and poked her flat skull with his iron hook. With one strong shake, she threw him off her back and he slid down. He got away just before she turned. Once he fell off, she was free. All right, thank you folks for listening. And basically you can read the complete story from the anthology. Okay, thank you very much and keep safe. Take care.
Thank you very much, Paul. Our next reader-writer is Rose Sayana. Rose and I are Instagram friends. We recently connected there, and I've been following her poetry posts and the obligatory cat posts. And when I was invited to curate readings this month, I quite immediately thought she would be a good new writer to feature. Rose is a copywriter who never thought she would be writing poetry. For the longest time, she fancied herself to be a short story writer, but years went by and she remained, these are her words, a solid, unmoving potato, waiting for inspiration. I would never call her a potato. She writes about anything that touches her heart, and 2 of her poems are featured in the Malaysian Millennial Voices Poetry Anthology, published earlier this year. She currently heads the copy team in a digital agency. Let's welcome Rose.
Hello, my name is Rose Zayana. I'm a copywriter slash accidental poet. And why I say accidental is because I've only started writing poems about 3 to 4 years ago. And how that came about was because I wanted to do more, I wanted to use my time traveling to work wisely, if you can put it that way, because I was taking the MRT. This was, pre-pandemic days. And I have about 45 minutes of traveling time. So I thought, instead of just scrolling through my Facebook or scrolling through Instagram, why don't I do something a bit more worthwhile? And so that's how I started writing poems, very short and bite-sized poems. And now fast forward to today, I actually am lucky enough to have some of my poems published in this book called Malaysian Millennial Voices. And today I'll be reading some of the poems for you, the poems that I will feature here. And I'll also be reading unpublished ones that I've posted on my Instagram account. So hope you'll enjoy this reading session with me. So the first poem that I'll be reading to you is called Ironic. And this poem is being featured in Malaysian Millennial Voices. What it's about is really self-reflection. I was dealing with a lot of self-doubts at that time, so that's how this poem came about. I'll read it to you right now. Here I am, pouring myself into star-shaped molds and fancy glassware, but I've made a promise to flow freely like the sea. This next poem is called Crystals, and it's also being featured in the Malaysian Millennial Voices. Crystals is about feeling uninspired, but it's a feeling of wanting to do and say more, but you feel stuck, um, and you want to be something meaningful to someone. So here's crystals. My thoughts aren't liquid, they've hardened like crystals. If only I could mine them, fashion them into something pretty, a little keepsake tucked safely in your memory. This next poem is unpublished, but it's something that I posted on my Instagram account. It's called Golden Years, and the inspiration for this was actually a character from the TV show called The Chair on Netflix. What attracted to me to that character was how she described herself. She was a professor, and she was talking to this man, and he was telling him how her face looked like an avalanche because she is old. So I was really inspired by that, because I was thinking, oh, that's interesting to describe your face. I've never seen anyone describe their face as an avalanche. So that's how this poem came about. So this is Golden Years. She touched her snow-white face and wondered how her youth and beauty would one day be swept to death by the avalanche of time, where folds of skin and unspoken dreams clung desperately onto the broken branches of golden memories and prayed for the sunshine of an eternal summer. This next one is called Tainted Vision, and it's inspired by that struggle to continue to see the good in someone after they've, after they've either disappointed you or broke your heart. And I guess it's just something that everyone can relate with. So here's Tainted Vision. How can I cleanse my vision from seeing this tainted side of you? I know that there's more to you than meets the eye, how your guises change under different lights. But like a bloodied, cracked mirror, I can't wipe you clean. The more I try, the more I smear red. This next one is called Lighthouse. It's actually one of my favorite poems. I wrote this for a loved one, and it was at a time where he was going through a rough patch, and I wanted to show and express my support for him. So here is Lighthouse. Dearest friend, on the days where your heart is wavering like the maddening sea, and your mind is a storm where no ship dare brave its merciless waves, just know that I will be your lighthouse, even if there is only one match in my hand. Now, this last poem is called Midas, and it's basically about the feeling of helplessness as you watch your loved ones struggle with something hard or bad in their life. So here's Midas. I wish I could untangle these nightmares from your mind and have them slip through the gaps of my fingers like pure liquid gold. Then, with my golden touch, I'll paint your night sky with stars and constellations so that it's never dark, even when you're dreaming. So that wraps up my reading session for you today. Thank you for tuning in, and if you'd like to get a copy of the Malaysian Millennial Voices, you can do so on Shopee. Thank you for tuning in and continue to support our local writers. Have a good day.
Thank you, Rose. Up next is my friend and colleague Sheena Baharuddin. We both teach creative writing and English literature at the School of English at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. And I'm just delighted that Sheena will be performing today. I always get excited when I know that Sheena is in a lineup because I know I'm in for a treat of a performance. And indeed, she's both author and performer. As a spoken word artist, she's participated in both solo and ensemble performances at a host of events, including Urbanscapes, Carnival Festival, Malacca Arts Festival, Georgetown Literary Festival, Singapore's Lit Up Festival, and London's National Poetry Library. And as an author, she's published 2 bilingual poetry collections, Rhymes for Mending Hearts, published in 2013, and All the Bodies We've Embraced, published in 2017. Her poems have also been translated into Spanish and French and featured in several local and international anthologies. I also recommend following her on Instagram, where she posts very interesting, very evocative and moving mixed media poems. So please welcome Sheena Baharuddin.
Hello. Hi. Apa kabar? Assalamualaikum. My name is Sheena Baharuddin, and I am a poet educator. I am a writer. I'm a performer. And for the past, I would say 10 to 12 years or so, I have been reading poetry. What does that mean? It means that not only do I read poetry ravenously, I also write poetry, I perform poetry, and now I teach poetry as well at the School of English, University of Nottingham. So I am very, very excited for this opportunity to be back at readings. I have very fond memories of this event. I miss that little house in Bangsa, but I guess this is the second best thing. So I hope that you enjoy the spoken word piece of mine. So once again, spoken word poem or spoken word piece is a poem that is written to be performed. And this one is a relatively new piece. It's called The Overview Effect. And it's dedicated, of course, to all of you. And it goes something like this. There is a term used by scientists to describe the sudden shift of consciousness experienced by astronauts upon seeing the Earth from space for the very first time. From this viewpoint, there are no more countries and borders, just a division of land and water. No more are the things that we think matter, like money, sex, politics, religion, and power, because from this viewpoint, everything is clear and quiet, except for the sound of breathing. As it dawned upon the astronauts that this tiny blue planet is the only place in the entire universe they can call home. Scientists call this phenomenon the overview effect. Now, you may never get to see me don a spacesuit to watch me walk on the moon, but meeting you has shifted my entire worldview from the singular to the plural. From me to we, from I to us, getting to know you has made me more than just a body of flesh and bones. I am seeing things I never used to notice before. Like how I was recently struck by the story that occurred in the cave of Hira, the story Muslims refer to as a Nuzul Quran, the night when the Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation. Now, what began as an evening meant for deep meditation came to a sudden end when the Archangel Gabriel appeared out of thin air, only to wrap their massive wings around the poor, unsuspecting 40-year-old man, left him breathless and shivering to his bones as the angel proceeded to seal his body into a vessel of prophethood. Read, Gabriel thundered. Iqra. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of God who created you from a mere clot, and yet Muhammad could not, for he was illiterate. 3 times the angel tightened their wings. 3 times the angel firmly repeated, until finally, sacred verses began spilling out from Muhammad's cracked lips like a desert spring, and the rest of the story, as we are told, became history. So I thought I knew it all, inside and out. But since waking up every morning with the first thoughts of you, I could not help but wonder aloud. Now, what if the prophet was never an illiterate? I mean, it is no mystery that the human race is best known for its propensity to forget. So perhaps he had only forgotten how to read the words long inscribed within until the heat from Gabriel's wings made the invisible legible again. And if that was the case, then perhaps we're all just breathing, walking secret messages, just waiting to be deciphered. Or maybe we are poems eager to be understood by first being recited out loud. Maybe all those times when we find ourselves laughing or crying without reason, or felt burdened by the weights of irrational fears, or when certain places felt like home even when we have never been there before, we were only seeing glimpses of the writings left on the walls of our souls. Maybe we used to read God before we were taught to speak human. And all we ever needed to experience the overview effect was just to be held on tight. Now I bet that was what happened when we first kissed. You were the fire casting light on the cave walls of my existence, and suddenly I am the archaeologist, resting my palms on the outline of a 40,000-year-old handprint. I am the mother counting my firstborn's fingers and toes. 1, 2, 3, 4. My heart on board a moonshot like the astronaut, mouthing the countdown, wondering if I'll ever get to feel gravity again. 4, 3, 2, 1. I am the prophet receiving my first revelation, seeing things I never used to notice before, like how our bodies are libraries filled with the memoirs of the long gone and the dearly departed. Those whose lineage could be traced back to the beloved, those whose features still ripple on the surface of our mirrored reflection, and all we have to do for us to see them is to be absolutely quiet. Like that night when I first slept in the warm stillness of your embrace. My love, I could read again. Thank you very much. So that was the overview effect. My name is Sheena Bahardin. Once again, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sheena Bahardin. And I shall leave you with a favorite quote of mine. My favorite quote, but it's not mine. It belonged to Ursula K. Le Guin, who once said, "I came empty-handed and the desire to unbuild walls." I might be rephrasing, but it goes something like that. And just like me, I come here empty-handed, but with a desire to find the similarities, the commonalities between you and I, no matter how different we are, because we are all parts of the same story. Thank you very much, readings. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sheena. Our final writer for today is Viji Krishnamurthy. And like Rose, she's a friend that I've made online. We recently connected through an article that featured our work, and we started, as you do, a Facebook conversation. Like Paul, Viji is also Ipoh born. I think there's something about Ipoh that produces writers. We have quite a number of writers from Ipoh. She's of Hokkien Chinese descent on her mother's side and Tamil descent on her father's side. Both parents were in education, so words have always been a big deal. Her primary, secondary, and tertiary education was spent between Kuala Lumpur, Madras, and London. When she returned from the UK in 1988 with an economics degree, she started off her working life as a cadet broadcast journalist at TV3 before dipping her toes into the world of sales and marketing in the hotel industry. Realizing her love for the written word, she returned to writing and spent several years as a freelance writer for magazines, including Going Places, the Malaysian Airlines in-flight magazine, Marie Claire, Her World, and currently contributes to Mind Asia, which is a digital magazine. She is co-editor of the Lockdown Chronicles, which some of you may have heard of, which is an anthology of 19 Malaysian voices, and she contributed a story to it too. Her debut novel, 912 Batu Road, was published in the third quarter of this year by Clarity Press. And this, my friends, is my current read. And I'm enjoying it very much so far. It's absorbing this way, 912 Batu Road. It's a very absorbing read, as all good stories are. And you haven't got your copy, I highly recommend you get one. It's available in all major bookstores, and you can also order a copy online. So let's welcome Viji.
Hi, my name is Viji Krishnamurthy, and I am very pleased to be here to read an extract from my novel 912 Batu Road. Penang, 24th December 1941. Ikonkar Satnam, God is one, truth is his name. The deep voice of Talochan Singh broke the silence of his home just as the early orange streaks of dawn warmed the crows that nested on the roofs of the terrace houses lining Sri Bahari Road. The brown patchwork of iron in various shades of rust was not a pretty sight, even for menaces like crows. Talochan was not one to bow his head in prayer, but he was desperate. He was built tough, but had the gentlest hands and the kindest way with the patients that came to the government clinic he worked at. He was a dresser and was fondly called Tochi by his patients and friends. This morning, thoughts of work hovered in the periphery of his mind. All he could think about was the fate of his family and his beloved Penang. A fortnight ago, Japanese fighter planes had conducted air raids on Butterworth across the channel. Thousands of people had witnessed it from the esplanade, what they believed was a safe place. The next day, they returned for more, hoping to catch a glimpse of the enemy and the Royal Air Force duel it out in the air. It had all gone badly wrong. Those who lined the streets of Georgetown to watch the spectacle soon realized in horror that their city was the target. With nowhere to hide, people fell like bowling pins, the body parts of neighbors, families, and friends strewn carelessly along the dusty roads in the aftermath of the Japanese bombing. On that fateful day, Tochi dressed the same as he did every day, in his starched white cotton shirt and white cotton trousers. The only color he permitted in his work attire was his turban. He had yards of colorful starched muslin that he deftly wrapped into turbans each morning. Today, he had on a navy blue turban to match his mood. He picked up his big jute marketing bag and made his way on foot to Chaurasta Market to buy fresh fruits and vegetables like he did every day. Tochi's first stop was always at the fruit cellar, where he picked the same fruits: oranges, pineapples, and bananas. He would always remember that very day and that exact moment his world changed while standing at the fruit stall. It happened so fast. One minute he was choosing oranges, and the next there were people running, screaming, "We've been hit! Run, run!" in a gibberish of languages and dialects. All around him, people were running and falling over. Tochi looked on in horror at the body parts that had scattered all over, as if a tempestuous child had dismembered her dolls in a moment of blind and unreasonable rage. People lay dead on the ground, their heads smashed open like burst watermelons, the dying trampled on by hysterical survivors. Tochi couldn't look at the carnage around him, but he forced himself to carefully pick his way out of the market. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a baby cradled in its dead mother's arms. Without thinking, Tochi pulled the baby out of her grip and ran. Shops along the main road were on fire, and he could smell something vile that he only realized much later was the smell of burning flesh. He would throw up for days whenever the memory of that smell corrupted his mind. His clothes were no longer white and no longer starched. Instead, he resembled a speckled hen that had escaped slaughter. In the ensuing melee, he had lost his turban. Tochi couldn't have cared less. He held on tightly to the baby and ran all the way home, praying that they wouldn't be hit by a bomb. He didn't know how long he ran, and he had no idea that he was still screaming when he reached his front door. His wife's look of shock jolted him back to reality, and he suddenly remembered he was carrying someone else's baby. Dalit quickly took the baby without asking and hushed him as he shut the door on the mayhem outside. For a moment, he felt safe. They spoke no words. She carried the crying baby, making calming sounds as she did so, as if patting the baby over her shoulder was part of her daily routine. There was a purpose in her gait. She brought Tochi a towel and pointed him to the bathroom. She carried the baby to the kitchen sink, stripped off his swaddling and washed off the grime and blood. He watched her blankly. Whose baby had I stolen? What have I done? He turned to the bathroom to clean himself, knowing full well that all the carnage he had witnessed could never be washed, scrubbed, or cleaned away. They would later, after several futile attempts to locate the baby's father or family, name him Satnam, meaning truth. In the days after Black Thursday, as the 11th of December came to be known, Penang witnessed more devastation and human loss. Tochi and his colleagues at the clinic worked round the clock as the injured and dead were wheeled in. A constant roll call of wounded, dead, barely alive, dead, dead. All the while, Tochi was wary, looking out for familiar faces amongst the dead. Some of the faces were so disfigured that he wondered how their loved ones would recognize them in the afterlife. His worst fears came true on the morning after the police station on Penang Road received a direct hit. His cousin Amar Singh, who was on duty there the evening before, was one of the fatalities. Tochi felt the blood drain from his face when he saw Amar lying on the stretcher with a huge patch of red on the sheet that covered him. He knew he would have to be the one to break the news to his ailing parents, a task he did not relish. He cursed the war. He was only 25 and he didn't deserve to go like this, he thought, as he pulled the sheet over Amar's face. The doctors and nurses at the clinic remained stoic, even though their hearts warned them otherwise. They needed little reminder that the days or even weeks to come would be grim and gruesome. They tried to maintain a semblance of normality in their day-to-day routine. Once in the operating theatre, conversations resumed, but invariably meandered back to the war. The British won't let us down, chided Dr. Menon in response to OT nurse Sister Tan's accusations that the British were not doing enough to protect Penang. If the Japanese attack us by land, the British will be there in full force. They're determined to keep Penang at all costs. Even if Malaya is overrun, Penang will always be a thorn in the Japanese backside. At midnight on the 13th of December, an orderly walked in with some news. I just cycled past the E&O Hotel, he declared. There must have been hundreds of women and children gathering in the lobby and the porch. Sister Tan looked up, her mouth set in a grim line. I told you, those Amokaus are up to no good. My instinct tells me that they are making plans to run and desert us. She proved to be a soothsayer. What the orderly had witnessed that night was an evacuation of European children and women. Within days, there was a total evacuation of British troops and European men, leaving Penang to defend herself. On the 19th of December, Japanese troops set foot on the island. Many would say that they just simply strolled in. For Penangites who had sworn their allegiance to the crown, the betrayal was too much to bear. In the clinic, the sense of despair quickly turned to anger. Those fucking white bastards, all their talk of fighting the enemy and protecting our land, and they crawled away at night like cockroaches from the gutter, swore Tochi. Thank you.
We've come to the end of our session today. Thank you very much to all our writers and to all of you who've been here with us today and who will be watching this recording later. Do leave your comments and responses in the chat box. For a bit of shameless self-promotion, I will also say that my novel Yalpanam is out, published by Penguin Random House Southeast Asia, and is available in Popular and Kinokuniya in Singapore and will be available in major bookstores in Malaysia in mid-October. So thank you again, everyone, and take good care of yourselves.